Before we start the video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. And now, let's go. Story 1. I have to be incredibly careful with what I say here. Not only because of the NDA I signed with one of the biggest names in gaming, but because what I'm about to share is one of the darkest secrets a billion-dollar company could possibly bury. And I fear the consequences might be worse than a pack of hungry lawyers clawing down my door. Honestly, I never planned to speak on any of this. In my mind, it was always meant to stay buried. One of the skeletons we take to the grave, you know? Maybe to come out to a longtime partner or some random at a bar. But for the most part, I fully expected to keep all of this to myself. Things have changed, drastically. A few months back, I was lurking on a few boards and came across a rumor that this particular gaming studio was developing a new project. By rule, I typically avoided anything related to this gaming studio, so it had been a while since I'd seen any associated news. I suppose that when I did see the community buzzing, it sparked a mild curiosity. This goes without saying, but most online rumors are entirely false, regardless of the conversation around them. However, anyone with a nerdy niche interest knows that if you're in the right circles, there's always someone who seems to know just a little bit more than everyone else. And confirmation from one of these types of people led me on a wild goose chase for more information. While I didn't find much beyond hints at what might be in development, I came across a comment that halted my research. The comment read, "I'm surprised / the gaming company / is still around. Does anyone else recall the disturbing stunt they pulled at their offices years ago? They never addressed it and continued on like nothing happened after seriously traumatizing people. Seriously, stop buying their games." It was odd at the moment. I could feel my heartbeat rapidly increasing in my chest. I kept rereading the comment over and over because there was no way he was referring to what I thought he was referring to. 5, 10, 15 minutes later, I'm still looking at the comment, trying to deny what I knew had to be true. But why was I reacting like that? I had seen the company's name and watched playthroughs of their game. Hell, I was doing research on them myself. Why was I reacting like this? Only now, on reflection, do I realize it's not about them. It's not even about me. Not really. It's in the understanding that the experience was a shared one. Not just my trauma, but the widespread silent trauma of everyone who had been there. We saw something collectively, and the fact that it wasn't just me or one or two other people made it so much more real. And even more so, we were all so scared that every single person had been forced into silence. I quickly typed out a reply for the commenter to message me. Not good enough. After deleting the comment, I messaged them directly, hoping and praying for a response. Almost immediately after I did, they replied with a simple F, off, and blocked me. Great. I spent the next few weeks looking to see if anyone else had said anything similar. My life was comprised of going to work, ordering takeout, and scouring the internet for someone else who would come forward. Nothing. And in the midst of all of this, I got a call, one that sent me spiraling. It reignited images of that day, so vivid, I often feel as though they're burned into my psyche. The following nightmares have woken me up in cold sweats on multiple occasions. So here I am, telling a story roughly a decade old. I apologize if anyone was looking for a grand adventure or a philosophical lesson. This isn't that. Just a story of a terrified man who understands that telling you this may be the only way I can cope. That's all I'm asking for at this point. I don't need a solution or even for those responsible to face justice. I just want to be able to sleep peacefully again. So, there I was again, lurking on forums. This one, in particular, was dedicated to one of the most anticipated titles of the time from the aforementioned gaming studio. Exciting life, I know. I rarely talked on forums, but whenever I did, I'd usually get replies from the same few accounts. Most of it was innocuous, and nothing I've committed to memory. I suppose that day was unique. At that point, we were still far enough away from release that there wasn't a whole lot of information out yet. So I did what any delusional person would do. I asked the board if anyone knew someone with inside info. Gameplay, mechanics, plans for the story. I didn't care. I just wanted something to enhance the excitement I was already feeling and the fear that my curiosity would grow painfully unbearable. Hours passed, and disappointingly, My question was lost in the sea of random conversation. It's not the first time, but this one stung a bit extra. I slept, thought nothing of it, and woke up to a familiar notification the next day. It was one of the accounts that had often replied to me. When I checked the forum, he had responded to my post with a simple yes and a link. Curious but excited, I cautiously clicked on it to see what they had sent me. I was greeted by this bland-looking flyer. My eyes widened as I read the headline, "Meet and greet with the dev team," along with the company logo and the title of the upcoming game. I nearly gasped when I finished reading the words. Here was my chance. I could meet the team behind the game and get some inside information on their plans. Hell, maybe I could even bring some of the most asked questions from the forum back and really make an impression on people. Anything to get those meaningless internet points. And wouldn't you know it, they were setting up shop pretty close, and tickets were relatively cheap. Back then, I assumed that dev teams only met fans at huge cons or launch parties, if they did at all. Never before a game was even released. But I wasn't complaining. In the end, I figured it was perhaps something to stir up some hype. It's not unusual for PR teams to devise innovative ways to connect with the public. And hey, maybe the team leaked a rumor or two to one of the participants, who then spread it around. And now there's a newfound interest in your game. It's wrong as hell now, but that's how I rationalized it in my mind. The day the meet and greet arrives, and I'm headed over. My expectation is to pull into a GameStop or some other cleared out lot with tons of fanfare. Maybe there would be signing booths, different stations, mascots, the whole thing. Instead, I pull into a relatively mundane set of office buildings. At first, I wasn't sure if I was very early or being pranked because there was no way an official event wouldn't have hundreds of people there, especially given that I live near a very populous city. Looking out my window, I finally spot a decent-sized line of people coming out of one of the buildings and several unremarkable signs lazily pointing toward where the meet and greet is taking place. Side note, if you're looking to crush the spirit of anyone attending your event, just don't try. Seriously, no effort is almost always worse than a bad effort. At least the latter shows you care. Anyway, remarkably less enthused, I made my way over to the line and waited. The most interesting part was the small talk with the organizers and some of the other waiting people. Not only that, but the line moved so slowly. If I hadn't been really committed to meeting the devs, I likely would have just walked away. I mostly stayed on my phone during my wait, but the few times I glanced up, something caught my eye. Every person who left seemed out of place. I don't know how to describe my feelings at the time. I think at first, I thought they were all depressed. At first, I assumed it was just general disappointment. But the more I observed, the more they seemed genuinely sad. A good portion of those who left were crying. Total strangers would exchange silent hugs. There was just this heaviness that I couldn't perceive. Little did I know that was a sneak peek at what was to come. My attention was immediately caught as I shifted my focus to the front door. At first, I thought I was being deluded. I had to be. But the more I watched, the more I noticed that not everyone who went inside came back out. You wouldn't see it at a glance. The frequency was irregular. Masterfully so. Just a few people vanishing here and there, never enough to trigger alarm. Maybe they stayed for an extra autograph. Maybe there was a back door. Rational questions. What's harder to rationalize is why they never returned to the only available parking lot. How many confused office workers glanced at them and quietly wondered? How many people were tasked with removing them and brushed off the creeping question? Where did the owners go? The thought of the empty cars sitting there, waiting for someone who would never return, it bugs me. I still get the ick when I see a car that's been sitting empty in one spot for too long. After what felt like forever, I finally made it to the front of the line. A guy in oversized sunglasses gave me a lazy nod toward the office entrance. The moment I stepped inside, I got hit with a blast of cold air. One of their hit game soundtracks was playing through some cheap, blown-out speakers, filling the space with tinny noise. Behind a desk sat a balding clerk, half buried in a sea of paperwork with a few suspicious cans lying about. Off to the side stood a single orange door. Taped to the frame was a scrap of paper with the poorly written words "Dev Team." I glanced around, expecting more before mentally chastising myself, given how the rest of the event had gone. couldn't exactly expect much more than what I was seeing. Aside from a dusty life-size cutout of one of their big-name characters, the room was depressingly bare. No merch, no excited fans, no energy, just recycled air, bad music, and the sense that maybe this wasn't worth the $40. We exchanged a few awkward hellos, and he slid a thick stack of paperwork my way. By then, I had already begun to feel that I no longer wanted to do this. But I come all this way, spent the gas, took the day off. At that point, it made more sense to just get it over with. I signed the forms and returned them. He took them, looked down, and hesitated. Then he let out a deep sigh and rubbed his temples. Long day, man. I asked him, trying to keep it light. He stared at me longer than necessary, then let out a short, tired laugh. Yeah, long day, he said before rattling off a canned spiel about NDAs and basic rules. Then he pointed toward the orange door, plastered a half-hearted smile on his face, and said, "Good luck." Ready to get my answers and promptly leave, I walked toward the door and give the man behind the desk, who had now moved to silently playing on his phone, one final half-smile. Touching the doorknob was like plunging my hand into dry ice. An instant, burning cold made me yank back with a gasp while instinctively shooting a look at the guy behind the desk. My shocked and angry expression spoke for me. He glanced up, gave me a lazy shrug, and went right back to scrolling on his phone. I wrapped my sleeve around my hand and tried again, gripping the cold metal through the fabric. This time the door creaked open. Inside, shadows swallowed everything. The only light came from the sickly blue glow of scattered computer monitors. As I stepped in, the door clicked shut behind me. The awful music from the lobby vanished, smothered by thick silence, broken only by a low electrical hum and a slight burning smell. Hello, I called out, my words eaten by the dark. I like to consider myself a rational person. I knew from the jump that this whole experience was off, and whatever this was, it set my danger signals to 100. I spun back toward the door and reached for the knob, only to recoil again. It was colder now, not just cold, biting. My fingers stung on contact like I'd touched dry steel in a snowstorm. I forced myself to try again. It didn't budge. I swore under my breath and pounded on the door. Hey, nothing. I hit it again, harder this time, desperate now, but no answer came. I tried again. Nothing. Like a caged animal, I pulled and twisted, hoping I could tear down the only thing keeping me from safety. But with each failed attempt, the cold reality sank in that I was alone. The hum and the dark were my only company. I let out a frustrated scream into the nothing before turning to face the dark room again. My eyes strained, hunting for some other way out, anything that wasn't a dead end. I crept toward the soft glow of one of the computer screens, moving slowly when my shin knocked into something solid. I froze. Reaching out, my fingers brushed against the back of something hard. Cautiously, I felt around the object until my mind pieced together what it was from the little light in the room. It was a chair. Figuring maybe I could use it to reach a vent or something, I swirled the object toward me, and before I even had time to process why, I was already falling back hard onto the floor. Someone was sitting in it, slumped, still almost posed. The dim monitor light cast a sickly blue glow over his face, but it wasn't the screen that drew my eye. It was his mouth. It hung unnaturally wide, distended, broken-looking, and from within a striped red and blue light spun like a siren buried in his throat. The flickering cast shadows across his gaunt face, dancing over skin pulled tight to the bone. Whatever fat or muscle he'd once had was long gone. He looked consumed, like he'd been starved from the inside out. His hands gripped the arms of the chair so tightly they seemed fused to it. Flesh sunken, knuckles bone white, fingernails blackened. His clothes hung off him in tatters, dusted in long strands of white hair that looked like they'd once belonged to a full head of shoulder-length hair. But it was his eyes, or the absence of them, that made my breath catch. His eye sockets gaped impossibly wide, empty but surgically clean. Not a drop of blood, not a shred of tissue. Just polished hollows where his eyes should have been. And yet, somehow, they weren't empty, because inside each socket, suspended in the void, spun another light. identical to the one in his mouth. Red and blue, rotating, silent, hypnotic. I found myself staring, trapped in those pits, caught in the endless cycle of color and motion. I don't know how long I was lost there, only that I snapped out of it with a sharp slap to my own face. Then I kicked the corpse away from me hard. My breathing turned erratic. My thoughts were a storm of confusion and panic. I had to find a way out. Now, I shot to my feet, fumbling for my phone, and flicked on the flashlight, desperately looking for another way out, but nearly dropped it when something on the man's monitor caught my attention. Lines of code were appearing on the screen, then vanishing, then reappearing, as if someone were typing and deleting in real time. I moved to the next workstation. Another body. Same position. Same spinning lights. Code was being written there as well. I moved to the next. And the next. Every screen. Every corpse. Every one of them still writing. I'm no game developer, but I couldn't stop myself from looking closer. Even with my limited understanding, it was clear this was game code. Someone had to see this. I hit record and made a second round, capturing all of the bodies and their workstations, hoping that as soon as I got out, I'd take it to everyone I could think of. The police, friends, and family. Hell, I would drive to the state capitol and show it to the governor if I had to. Whatever was happening here couldn't be kept a secret. And then the silence broke. It was subtle, barely there. In any other setting, I might have missed it entirely. The faintest sound of an inhale. I turned toward the sound, my heart hammering against my ribs. One of them, the one nearest to me, its jaw twitched. A tiny, grotesque motion, like it was struggling to open wider, to pull in more air. I stepped closer. The mouth opened further, joints clicking. The breath came again, deeper this time. They were breathing. I turned on my phone's flashlight, desperately looking around the room for a way out. And the lights, God, the lights. The lights in their eyes started spinning faster, the speed increasing in sync with the breaths. It was like they were waking up. I turned my phone's flashlight back on and swept it across the room. Panic now, in full bloom. There had to be another way out. There had to be. But the walls were bare. No windows. No vents. I was alone with the glowing screens and breathing corpses. I turned and bolted back to the door. I grabbed the knob again, but this time the cold was even deeper. It burned my skin, but I didn't let go. I couldn't. All the while, I'm banging and screaming at the top of my lungs. Please, for the love of God, help me. Bang, bang, bang. Asterisk, asterisk, the breaths were growing deeper, heavier. I knew I was running out of time. I slammed my fist against the door harder, faster. From behind me, I heard it. The soft creak of old chairs turning in unison. Bang, bang. Asterisk, asterisk, help. I screamed. Desperate. Raw. A wet cough echoed from the room. One of the corpses was waking up. They were coming. God damn it. I yelled. And then daylight. I flew out the tiny crack, turning for a final glance just in time to see one of the corpses illuminated by the light, its neck cracking as it fully rotated toward me. Its jaw popped as it attempted to communicate. And then, in a loud whisper that didn't match the movement of its mouth, it spoke. Standing above me was the man from the front desk, arms crossed, face twisted with barely concealed annoyance, like I'd spilled coffee on his favorite keyboard. All right, that's enough, he said flatly. You need to leave. I scrambled upright, gasping, trying to piece together a coherent sentence, anything to make him understand. I babbled about the bodies, the lights, the breathing, the code. He held up a finger to his lips and then pointed at the door, all while giving me a look that clearly stated, "You're crazy." I stared back, confused. How could he not get it? I wasn't crazy. I had seen what I saw. The man himself was mere feet from the door. And if others were experiencing the same thing within minutes of each other, I'd imagine all of them would be as disturbed as I am. So, what the hell? At first, I didn't want to leave. I couldn't leave. There were people in there who clearly needed help. And I'd already seen others go in and never come out. I begged the man to listen. That's when two large guys materialized out of nowhere and physically removed me from the building. No discussion. Later, I got a text. No pleasantries, just a reminder that everything I saw and heard that day was protected under the NDA I signed. and a warning that this company had no qualms about launching life-ruining lawsuits to protect its secrets. At first, I didn't care. What I had recorded clearly crossed a line. This wasn't just a breach of contract, but a serious criminal offense. Then, I tried to check the footage. Corrupted. Every file. Of course. The only thing left was to call the police. Elite said there were sick people inside, possibly in danger. But I didn't stick around. I couldn't bring myself to be there when they showed up. To this day, as far as I know, there's never been a news story. No investigation. No PR nightmare for the company. Only silence. I wish I could take anything from any of this. As far as I know, I don't have clinical depression, but I felt like I was right there for a couple of months. The game eventually came out to great reviews, and of course, I couldn't bring myself to play it. Or any of their other games, for that matter. It's weird. You'd think any mention of that studio or their IPs would send me into a full-blown panic, but it's not like that. Not at all. I do have this lingering dread that follows. But it's almost like my abject fear is stuck in that place. Or rather, with that place. I mean, hell, I don't even know if whatever I experienced has anything to do with the studio in question. To that point, I conducted research on who was involved with the actual game, and none of the names of the development team that I allegedly met were listed. But still, they were coding something, right? I mean, I saw them building a game. I think of all this. The thing I think back on most was when the last corpse turned to me. He said something that was undeniably the most true thing I know about this situation. He said, "I'm in hell. Whoever you are or were, I'm sorry." Last thing, and I almost forgot this one. For a while, I was getting these weird calls. At first, I thought they were just promotional robocalls telling me to buy their games because I had been placed on a list somewhere. One day, I grew tired of the spam and said something less than pleasant on the phone. Immediately, the guy on the other end pauses and tells me, "Remember to keep your fucking mouth shut." He proceeded to list off my home address and where I worked at the time. Then, he hung up, and for years, he never called back. It wasn't until after I tried communicating with that random commenter that I finally received another call. The call that set me on the path here today. He didn't speak for long. He didn't need to. I'll remember his words forever. He said, "You almost broke your silence. It's too bad. We know you have great eyes for gaming. Next time, we'll use them." To this day, I don't know what to do with that. Before anyone asks, no, I'm not saying the location of the offices or releasing any information about anything. I just can't. Even if I could, I don't believe anyone should be digging into this. Honestly, I wish I could end this off with something. I don't know. Important? Meaningful? However, I don't have anything to offer. Like I said earlier, I'm just a scared guy who needed a vent. However, I appreciate anyone who took the time to read this. At the very least, I can offer you this parting piece of advice. Be really careful which doors you step through. You never know what you'll find on the other side. Story 2. It's 3:43 a.m. I haven't slept. I don't think I can anymore. I've been living alone in this apartment for over 3 years now, and nothing strange has ever happened until last night. To get the context straight, I live in an old building. The kind that still has wooden window panes, creaky pipes, and ceiling fans with those big brown blades. I've always liked the hum of the fan. It's oddly comforting. You know, that software that blends with the silence of the night. That's why I keep it running year-round. Now here's the thing. My fan only ever spun in one direction, clockwise. That's just how it's wired. There's no reverse setting, no switch, no remote, just one wall regulator knob. And it's been that way for years. So when I woke up last night at around 2:15 a.m. because of this odd cold air hitting my face like a concentrated stream of wind, I thought maybe the weather had shifted suddenly. But when I opened my eyes, the fan was spinning counterclockwise. Slowly, quietly, too quietly. At first, I chalked it up to a weird dream. Maybe I'd slept weirdly and was imagining things. I even got up, stood on the bed, and stared at the fan just to be sure. I flipped the switch off. The fan slowed to a stop. Then I turned it back on. It started spinning clockwise again. Like normal. I laughed it off, went to pee, drank some water, and lay back down. Maybe 5 minutes passed. Just as I started to doze off, I heard something. Click like a light switch. But softer. More deliberate. I opened my eyes. The fan was spinning counterclockwise again. But this time it wasn't slow. It was fast and silent. Too silent. The usual hum, the buzz of electricity, it was just gone. It felt like someone had muted it. And the breeze wasn't cool anymore. It was icy cold. Not air-conditioned cold. Grave cold. I sat up. I was fully awake now, heart pounding. I grabbed my phone to record it, but as soon as I lifted the camera, the fan stopped, dead still. No slowing down. Just stop. Then I heard footsteps. Above me. I live on the top floor. I don't mean the sound of rats or pipes or old wood creaking. I mean full-on, measured footsteps, pacing directly above my bed. Slow, heel to toe, back and forth. Then they stopped, and something knocked. Asterisk from inside the ceiling. Asterisk I ran. I straight up grabbed my keys, phone, and wallet and bolted. Slept in the stairwell for the rest of the night like an idiot. My neighbors probably think I'm on drugs. This morning, I checked the fan again. It's working like normal. Clockwise. Buzzing like usual. The regulators untouched. I even opened the switchboard. No sign of tampering or rewiring. I climbed up with a ladder and knocked on the ceiling. It's solid concrete. No crawl space. Nothing. I called my landlord. He said no one has access to the rooftop. It's locked, and he hasn't given the key to anyone in years. But just now, literally 10 minutes ago, I came back from the store and my bedroom felt different. Cold again. Not the temperature, but like the air was heavier. And on the bed, one of the fan blades. Just one. Lying flat across my pillow like someone had gently placed it there. The rest of the fan is still intact. No loose bolts. No cracks. Just missing a blade. I'm not sleeping here tonight. Or ever again. But before I leave, I need to know, has anyone else seen their fan reverse on its own? And if so, did anything come down when it did? I wasn't planning to come back. After finding that fan blade on my pillow, I packed a bag and left. I stayed at a friend's place. Didn't tell them the full story, just that I was dealing with wiring issues. I didn't want to sound insane, but curiosity is a disease, and it got me. This morning, around 11 a.m., I went back. Daylight made it easier to pretend everything had a rational explanation. Maybe the blade came loose. Maybe my memory was playing tricks on me. Maybe I was sleepwalking and knocked it down myself. The apartment felt normal. Too normal. Like someone had aired it out, fluffed the pillows, and removed the weight in the air. I half laughed at myself and opened the bedroom door. The fan was whole again. All four blades. Spinning clockwise. Buzzing like always. The one I saw on the pillow was gone. I searched everywhere. Under the bed, in the closet, even in the bathroom. Nothing. That's when I started to feel that cold again. Not freezing, just dense. Like the kind of cold that settles in your bones without warning. I should have left. I know that. But instead, I stood directly under the fan and stared at it. It was spinning lazily, clockwise, innocent. Then I heard it again. Click, just once. And the fan stopped. This time, it didn't reverse. It didn't move at all. But a regulator knob on the wall, it started turning on its own. Slowly, deliberately, back and forth. I stepped back, and then the lights went out. Not just flickered, completely blacked out. Middle of the day, but the curtains were closed, and I suddenly couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. I reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight. That's when I saw the footprints. Not shoe prints. Bare feet. Dusty. Human. But wrong. The toes were too long, almost claw-like. They started near the foot of my bed and led to the wall, where they stopped. And above them, faint scratch marks, for parallel lines about the width of a hand, gouged vertically into the paint, like someone or something had climbed up the wall. I swear to you, as I stood there frozen, the ceiling fan let out a single mechanical groan. It wasn't spinning, it wasn't moving, but made a sound like it was grinding its teeth. That was enough. I ran. I didn't even take my bag, just locked the door from the outside and left. I called an electrician an hour ago, told him I needed the entire ceiling fixture removed. He just called me back. Here's what he said. I never asked for that. I never did that. No one has access. I live alone. I asked him if he removed the fan. He said no. When he reached to unscrew the blades, he heard whispering right above him. Clear, slow, unintelligible. He left without touching it. I think it doesn't want to be removed. I'm staying in a hotel tonight, but something's bothering me. When I was walking out of the building, one of my neighbors, an old lady on the second floor, called out to me. She said, I shook my head. She frowned. There's no floor above mine, and yet someone's crawling. Story 3. It started with my left eye. I was brushing my teeth, leaning against the sink, tired in that way where everything feels a little warped at the edges. The mirror was fogged, streaked from the last half-hearted wipe with my sleeve, and I was barely paying attention. But then I blinked, and she didn't. Just a second too late. Just enough to make my chest go still for a beat. I laughed under my breath, shrugged, told myself I was imagining things. Probably just tired. I even said it out loud. You're overtired. You're being weird. But she didn't shrug back. Or maybe she did, but not at the same time I did. Her movement was slower, or delayed, or hesitant, like she was copying me, not reflecting me. I waved my right hand. A little test. She followed, but there was a pause, a stutter in the space between my decision and hers. It wasn't long, barely half a second, but it felt like a choice, like she was watching me and deciding whether or not she was going to bother playing along. That's what stayed with me. Not the eye, not the delay, the idea that she was deciding. I rinsed my mouth and stood there longer than I should have. The bathroom light was buzzing faintly overhead. The air smelled like mouthwash and humidity, and my own reflection didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like someone very good at pretending. I didn't tell anyone. I don't know why. Maybe saying it would have made it real. Maybe I was scared someone would believe me. That night, I stood in front of the mirror again, stared at her, blinked. She blinked with me, perfectly in time. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't looking at a reflection anymore. I was looking at someone waiting for me to stop watching. Over the next few days, it got worse. It started with my left index finger. I noticed it while trying to tie my shoelaces. It just wouldn't curl right. The rest of my hand moved fine, but that finger stuck out at a weird angle, stiff and numb like it had fallen asleep and forgotten how to wake up. I shook it out, flexed it, pressed the pad with my thumb until it throbbed. Nothing. Just cold. I went to the bathroom, flicked the light on, and held both hands up to the mirror. She moved. All 10 fingers curled perfectly. Smooth. Effortless. I watched her copy me exactly, except my hand didn't move the same. One digit limp. A delay in my wrist when I tried to match her rhythm. My hand twitched, and hers followed like she was mocking me. I told myself it was a weird nerve thing. Maybe I slept on it wrong. Maybe it was stress. Bodies do weird things all the time, right? I Googled it, which was a mistake. 5 minutes in, and I convinced myself I had early onset ALS or a brain tumor pressing against the wrong part of me. I made a doctor's appointment. Urgent. I didn't say my reflection is behaving like it's a separate person. I just said I was worried, that something wasn't working the way it should. I think I already knew they wouldn't find anything. They didn't. The scans were clean. My reflexes were fine. No muscle wasting. No lesions. No obvious reason why half my hand wouldn't respond unless I moved it with the other. The doctor asked if I'd been under stress lately, with that look people give you when they're already halfway to writing it off as anxiety. I smiled and nodded. I didn't know how to explain it. Didn't know how to say. My reflection is learning to live without me. And worse, I think she's getting good at it. I stopped going to the mirror casually. I used to pass it a dozen times a day, brushing my teeth, fixing my hair, checking if my shirt was on backwards. But now I started avoiding eye contact with myself, walking past without looking, keeping the lights off, pretending I didn't feel her watching me. But I still caught glimpses, enough to know she was changing. It started subtle. Her movements were quicker, cleaner. While I fumbled to tie my hoodie one-handed, she moved like she had nothing wrong with her at all. Fluid, sharp, whole. My reflection had always been half a second behind. That's how mirrors work. But now she was anticipating me, starting a movement just before I did, like she knew what I was going to do next. Like she'd already practiced. And then she stopped pretending altogether. One night, I looked up while washing my face and saw her head tilted, not softly, not in thought, but in this slow, mechanical way, like she was observing me, studying. And the worst part is I hadn't moved. I was still hunched over the sink, dripping water down my shirt, eyes closed. When I opened them, she was smiling. Not a warm smile, not a nervous one. Something smug, crooked, self-contained. like she'd figured something out and wasn't going to tell me. Another time, I caught her mouthing something. I was brushing my teeth, trying not to shake too badly, and in the mirror, her lips moved slow and deliberate, forming words I didn't recognize. I tried to mimic her, say the shapes aloud, but it came out as nonsense. She just kept going, unbothered. She waved at me once. Just once. I hadn't lifted my hand. I decided to test her. I sat on the bathroom floor with the lights off and the door cracked just enough to let in the hallway glow. From there, I could see the mirror. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I kept myself as still as I could, jaw locked, hands tucked under my thighs. Just watching. She moved. Not a lot. Not dramatically. Just little things, a twitch at the corner of her mouth, a roll of her shoulder, the soft, slow way she turned her head and looked directly at me. I didn't return it. I kept staring straight ahead, and she smiled. It felt wrong. Not because she moved, I'd seen that already, but because she looked amused. She looked like she was waiting for me to catch up. I sat there until my eyes burned, until my legs went numb, until the quiet in the room stopped feeling peaceful and started feeling aware. Like it had noticed me, like it was breathing, and still she moved. Not constantly, just enough to remind me she wasn't copying anymore. She was existing. She was independent. Eventually, I got brave enough to try something else. I pulled a chair in, faced the mirror directly, sat as still as I could for hours. I drank nothing, ate nothing. I wanted to see if she would stop too. If she could. She didn't. Not first. She fidgeted, tilted her head, tapped her fingers on the arm of the chair, the arm I couldn't feel anymore. She looked around like there was something in her side of the room I couldn't see. Then she met my eyes, dead on, and she froze. We stared at each other for what felt like an hour, maybe more. I don't remember blinking. I don't remember breathing. I only remember thinking. It felt like losing a staring contest with a corpse that had learned how to smile. I'm not sure when my arm stopped being mine. One day it was heavy. The next, it just didn't respond. I tried to lift it, and nothing would happen, like trying to move someone else's limb through glass. My hand hung limp against my side. My elbow locked. My fingers curled just enough to look alive if I was standing still. But they weren't. Not really. The worst part was watching her use it. In the mirror, she raised her arm easily. She twirled it, cracked her knuckles, waved, sometimes at me, sometimes at something behind her I couldn't see. She moved like her body belonged to her, like she was thriving in the parts of me I was losing. I started walking with a limp. My right knee wouldn't bend properly anymore. My face was next, just one side at first. My cheeks sagged, lips slack, the corner of my mouth too still when I tried to smile. The mirror version didn't have that problem. She beamed, showed teeth, tilted her head in mock sympathy. Once she laughed, this bright, airy laugh that came from my throat, even though mine stayed silent. Because that's when I realized I couldn't speak. Not just stammer, not just slur. My mouth wouldn't open, not even a scream. I pressed my fingers to my lips and tried to force them apart. My jaw wouldn't move, and she talked. Freely, loudly, cheerfully. I couldn't hear the words through the glass, but I saw the rhythm of them, saw the shape of her joy. It was mine, the way I used to talk when I got excited, the way I used to look before I started watching myself lose everything. Then she leaned forward, placed one finger gently against the inside of the mirror. I didn't touch it, but I felt it. Cold, real, like she was already halfway through. I can't move anymore. Not really. Just one hand, the right. My fingers shake when I use them, but they're still mine for now. Everything else is gone. My legs won't lift. My neck won't turn. My mouth hasn't opened in days. I blink sometimes, but only if I try hard enough. Only if she lets me. She's standing in the mirror, closer than she's ever been. She doesn't mimic me now. She doesn't need to. She stretches, dances, touches her own face, braids her hair differently every night. I don't know where she learned that. I never taught her. But she looks so proud when she finishes. Like she's rehearsing a version of me that works better. Last night, she brought someone with her. Just a shadow in the background. Someone with no face. Someone who laughed. She laughed too. They leaned in close and whispered something to her. And she looked at me, and rolled her eyes like I was a joke she'd outgrown. I don't think she knows I still have this hand. Or maybe she does. Maybe she's letting me write this. Maybe this is part of the performance. One last story before the curtain closes. I can't feel my heartbeat anymore. I don't remember when I last slept. Or ate. I don't remember my brother's face. I had a brother, I think. Or a cat. Or both. My name feels far away. Like it belongs to someone else. Maybe she has it now. She's closer today. Her hands on the glass. Pressed flat. Waiting. I can feel the cold again. It's spreading. When this is posted, she'll be all that's left. And I'll be inside. Screaming. I'm not sure when it happened. There wasn't a crack of thunder. No last scream. No moment where I could say this is where I stopped being me. It was quieter than that. Like falling asleep in the wrong bed and waking up in someone else's skin. I know I'm not in control anymore. I can't move. Not even my fingers. I see her now through a filter I don't understand, a kind of slow, cold distance like I'm watching her through frost. She lives here. In my house. In my body. And no one notices the difference. She laughs with my voice. Eats with my mouth. Answers messages I can't read anymore. When someone calls, she tilts her head and smiles. Like she's proud of the impression. Sometimes she stands in front of the mirror, not to check her makeup or fix her hair, just to stare at it. Like she's waiting for something to look back. I try. God, I try. I push with everything I have. I scream until I'm hoarse in places that don't exist. I press my hands to the glass. I reach. I reach. I reach. But I don't think she hears me anymore. Tonight, she lit a candle, stood in front of the mirror, smoothed her dress like it was a ritual. The room was quiet. The air didn't move. And then, just as the flame flickered low, she leaned in. Her lips brushed the glass. And she whispered finally, Story 4. You know the kind of posts I'm talking about, those dumb chain image things your grandma shares on Facebook. Repost or get bad luck for 5 years. I always figured they were just bait for attention or engagement. Nothing more. But yesterday, after waking up, I saw one that stopped me cold. It was from my cousin Meg. We haven't spoken in a while, but we grew up close, both raised by single moms just a few streets apart. She's sharp, skeptical, has a big social media following. Definitely not someone who'd fall for viral garbage. Her post said, "You've been chosen to see something beautiful. Share now to opt out." Attached was a photo of an elderly hand with grotesquely overgrown fingernails, clutching a stitched, homemade faceless doll in torn army green overalls. In the background were more dolls, all faceless, all dressed differently, standing upright in a concrete room tinted by green haze. In the corner of the frame, you could see part of a wrinkled, balding man's face. Just one wide, unblinking eye, and it looked gleeful. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. Not just because of the photo, but because Meg posted it. I clicked on her profile, confused. After a long buffer, the post was gone. Refresh. Gone. No trace of it. I told myself she realized how weird it was and deleted it. Still, I couldn't shake the image. I kept checking back, but nothing new appeared. I mustered the energy to get out of bed and threw on a dirty college sweatshirt and went to walk my dog, Biscuit. I had a nagging headache and didn't really care how I looked. The fresh autumn air in New England usually clears my mind. The orange and yellow leaves, the soft crunch underfoot, the smell of chimney smoke. I used to love this season, but lately I've felt hollow, like I'm watching life through frosted glass. Biscuit is one of the only things that brings me joy anymore. We weren't far into the walk when I ran in my neighbor Jeff. He's usually the type to corner me with boring car talk, but today he knelt down and hugged Biscuit like a child seeing his dog after years away. I almost smiled. Then he stood and said, "Wait here, I've got something for him." He opened his car and pulled out a small toy. Biscuit grabbed it eagerly, but then Jeff looked at me, a slow, sadistic smile creeping across his face. "I heard you've been chosen," he whispered. I looked down. The toy in Biscuit's mouth was the doll. Same green overalls. Same stitch body. My stomach turned. For a split second, I felt euphoric, like seeing a dream I forgot I had. I remembered me and Meg at the beach when we were kids, laughing, soaking wet from chasing waves. It was so vivid. Then Jeff's grin shattered the moment. I grabbed Biscuit, left the doll on the sidewalk, and bolted. Back home, I lay down, hoping to sleep off the headache. I was just starting to drift asleep when I heard a knock. The postman stood there with a certified envelope. Needed a signature. I signed, not thinking much of it, and tossed it on the counter. But my thoughts kept spiraling. The doll, the image, the way it made me feel. You ever try to remember a childhood moment that's too fuzzy to grasp? This was the opposite. Crystal clear. Like someone opened a window into my own past. I got up, planning to return to the sidewalk and see if the doll was still there. Then I remembered the envelope. I opened it. Inside was a large printed photo, the exact Facebook image. The doll, the man, the haze. My headache instantly vanished. I stared at the doll and was swept into another memory. Me and Meg at a snowy bus stop, laughing hysterically as my brother Tommy slipped on the ice. I'd forgotten that moment even existed, but it was real. I could feel it. Tears filled my eyes. What a beautiful memory. Then I tore the photo to shreds. My headache came roaring back, worse than ever. I dropped to my knees, clutching my temples. Then my phone rang. I jumped but sighed when I saw it was just Mom, except she was hysterical. Laughing? Crying? I couldn't tell. She asked if I saw the news about my cousin. My stomach twisted. Which cousin? I asked. Silence. Which cousin? A long pause. Then, finally, you know exactly who. The call cut off. Heart racing, I opened Facebook. For the first time, Meg's profile had an update. A photo. Meg's dead body. She was wearing green overalls. Sitting in that same concrete room, but this time multiple rotted dead bodies in the background. The wrinkled man was there too, just his forehead and hand, but this time the hand was wrapped entirely around Meg's waist. A smoking revolver sat on the table, and a bullet was lodged into her forehead. Her eyes were rolled back. She was smiling. That same sadistic smile Jeff had. My phone slipped from my hands. When I looked up, an old brittle man was rocking slowly in the chair across my living room. He was shaking something in his hand. The doll. But this time it was dressed like me. I collapsed in front of him, overwhelmed. And then I saw it all. Every moment of my life, playing out in perfect clarity. My mom's warm smile as I was born. Running wild in the neighborhood as a kid. My first heartbreak. Graduating. All of it. I don't want to die, but I couldn't look away. I felt my hand reach for the kitchen knife. I didn't even feel the first thrust. Or the second. Blood poured from my mouth. But I didn't stop watching. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And now I just want to show you. I want to show you something beautiful. https://imager.com/5JGDI Story 5. I noticed it about a week ago, and I'm completely at my wit's end. I've been married to my partner for 7 years now. We met, fell in love, and wanted to start a family soon after, but somehow my dream has turned into this nightmare these past few days. Charlie, my son, was born around 6 years ago, and I don't think I've ever felt this much love for anything in my life. The first time I held him was the day I swore I would do everything in the world to make his life the best it could be. And I don't want to brag, but I think my partner and I have done an absolutely fantastic job. We've never argued in front of him, never not shown him love or neglected him, or let him see the normal stress of adult life, even if our own went from bad to worse during the pandemic. What I want to say with that is that no matter what happened, Charlie knew that he would always come first for us. No nightmare was small enough to not wake us up. No scrape on his knee is not important enough to not make us check him thoroughly. No fever was low enough to not make us take notice. And we did all of that together. Family dinners, movies, even the playground. Only, since about a week ago, my child has changed, and I don't know what to do anymore. It started right after I had tucked him in and read him a bedtime story. "What is pain?" he asked me. I remember it so clearly, as the question caught me completely off guard. With no idea where it had come from, I felt a chill as I looked down his almost angelic face and saw this strange twinkle in his eyes. That was the first time I felt like he had changed somehow. Of course, I didn't say anything but tried to answer his question as age-appropriately as possible, but my reply left him visibly unsatisfied. He was biting at his lips, something he had always done, but on that day, it too felt different. Less unsure, more aggressive. And all the while his eyes continued looking up at me, as I felt this strange chill in the atmosphere of the room. Of course, I told my wife, but she didn't seem to react at all. Well, I managed to talk myself down back then, and the next morning, when we went to the playground as a family, I reasoned that I must have just let my imagination get the better of me. I guess if that was the truth, I wouldn't be writing everything down right now, though. It was at the playground when I got this strange feeling again. Charlie was running around like normal. I tried to tell myself at first, but soon these doubts crept up once more. I don't know. I watched him intently, and he kind of seemed off. Like his gait was different. The steps he took looked strange, like he tried to move legs that were far shorter than normal. Then there was the way he sometimes stopped with this wide and almost manic grin and looked at each of the children around him in turn. My wife didn't seem to notice, but I could feel it. Even if I didn't want to admit it to myself, somewhere inside, I couldn't shake those suspicions. Charlie had changed. Or was it even my son at that point? A kid a bit younger than him was sitting on the swing, trying to gain some speed, and I could see the instant my son's eyes fell upon it. There was this change in his smile, this cruelty that only for a moment showed on his face. I was up on my feet before he reached the swing set, but my wife grabbed hold of my wrist as if to stop me. I didn't want to doubt her as well. Maybe she was just startled by my sudden movement, I told myself, but her hand held me back anyway. So I watched as Charlie approached the swing and suddenly grabbed it on the way down, making the girl sitting on their lose her balance and crash to the ground with a loud thud. The girl cried out, and I remember my son's grin, hidden from almost everyone as he looked down at her, then let go of the swing. My wife was over there in an instant while I couldn't move at all. Thankfully, nothing major had happened. The girl had scraped her forehead a bit, and Charlie was adamant that it had been an accident, but I know better. I saw him grab the swing and smile. We went home quickly after, with my wife almost babying our son, asking him if he had hurt himself over and over again. I could see in his eyes, this strange and not even remotely childlike look he had. He was shaking his head at every question, but kept staring at the hand he had used to stop the swing. I don't know, maybe I'm interpreting too much into such a gesture, but I feel like I could see him wondering what else he could have done, and I get shivers even thinking about that. That night, my wife put him to bed, while I felt completely restless. I was walking around the kitchen, trying to make sense of what I had seen. Something had changed about my son. That much was obvious. Only, I didn't know how much. At least not until a few nights ago. Back then, as I went upstairs into our bedroom, long after she had put Charlie to bed, I suddenly stopped. I was maybe 3 steps away from the door to his room, but I thought I could hear him. He wasn't talking out loud or mumbling, but whispering, hissing in there. I felt a chill as I put my ear to the wall to hear him better, but all I could make out were those strange, high-pitched sounds. Of course, I didn't just leave him be, but opened his door, and the moment I did so, the whispers stopped. He was lying in bed, under his covers, pretending to be asleep. I know what my son sounds like when he sleeps, but this was not it. There isn't a single doubt about that in my mind. It felt like he was waiting for me to leave, and being tired, I did so after a few more seconds. The very next day, when my wife took our son to get a haircut, I snuck the old baby monitor into his room and hid it by his bed. I know what that sounds like, but I promise you, I am and was not crazy. If I hadn't found anything after that stunt, I was determined to get myself checked up at the hospital, but I did. That evening, I listened on my wife and son when she put him to bed. It started off normal at first. She began to tell him a story, but after not even 2 minutes, he asked her to stop and simply talk with him. He sounded different, far too mature, and my wife's voice almost broke. They chatted about their day as if they were old friends instead of mother and son, but I could hear it every time my wife spoke. She sounded strained and on edge. It was only then that I realized that she knew as well. This strange, cold chill seemed to blow through the house as I continued to listen. They didn't talk about anything out of the norm, but the flow of their conversation just felt completely off. It was almost like Charlie was trying to learn how he should behave around normal humans. He asked her what the hairdresser's intention had been with a few of his questions, what the other people would have thought of his behavior. Stuff like that. Part of me wanted to run up there and confront him directly, but hearing my wife answering in this strangely demure tone made me stop and wait. She sounded scared, almost. So maybe it had gone on for longer than I thought. Soon after, my son told her to let him sleep, and I heard my wife walking out of the room and toward our bedroom a few seconds later. No goodnight kiss, no I love you. If I ever had any doubts, that alone would have told me all I needed to know. The problem was I couldn't concentrate on that at all. As soon as my wife had left, the mumbling started. At first, it was almost incoherent, but after a few seconds, I could make out some fragments. It sounded like a prayer. This reverie in his voice made sweat break out all over my body. He wasn't speaking in English, no, nor any other language I know of. The words sounded older, rougher. What I can say for sure is that it wasn't gibberish. His mumbling prayer had a meaning. I could feel it. It flowed out of him in a continuous stream for a minute until suddenly he stopped. I was standing by the counter of the kitchen, staring down at the old baby monitor, then heard his voice, now sounding far too deep for a 6-year-old child. "Stop listening," he growled, then took a breath. I did not like being spied on. The device in my hand started to blink wildly before smoke came out of its top, and it burst into flames. I wanted to run away, but I knew I couldn't. My wife was still upstairs, but that time as I snuck up there and past my son's bedroom, I could hear him, chuckling. Of course, I didn't dare open the door, but ran past toward the room where my wife would be. My plan was to get her out of there if it came to it with force, but the moment I saw her and she saw me, all that bravado left me. She was sitting on the bed, crying silently as I walked in. There was fear in her eyes, real, unadulterated terror and panic. I knew it at that moment. This thing had done something to her. So I sat down next to her and hugged her without saying a word for a long, long time. We fell asleep like that. I think because when I woke up, it was from something long and sharp cutting into my cheek. Next to my side of the bed, I saw Charlie standing and holding a kitchen knife while staring down at me like one would do an insect. I wanted to scream for help, but he put one of his fingers over my lips, and I swear my body seemed to freeze. Moving a muscle was out of the question, and the knife wandered down toward my throat. "What is fear?" Charlie whispered in this gruff voice, but kept his finger on my lips. I looked over at my wife, whose eyes were wide as she stared back, unmoving just like me, trembling and sweating. I could do nothing but lie there and wait for what would happen next. This thing delighted in my terror, and I was sure it would cut me or stab me, but instead it suddenly pulled the knife away and dropped it to the floor before turning and walking out of our bedroom as if nothing had happened at all. I tried talking to my wife, but she shook her head and held her hands over her ears the second I mentioned our son. Is he possessed? Was he always like that, but stopped hiding it? Has something else taken his place? I don't know anymore. My wife won't talk to me about it. She smiles while she trembles from head to toe every time Charlie enters the room. This morning, we sat at the table, having breakfast in complete silence while he told us what he dreamed about. I don't know how long we're going to last. We can't run. My wife's eyes tell me as much. I can't call the police. This thing would simply play dumb. What else can I do? Please, just anything. Or we might all be dead soon. https://www.reddit.com/r/audio drama/comments/10HQKP/haunted_tales_horror_anthology_podcast. That's it for today's creepy Reddit tales. Before we go, I just want to say a quick thanks to all of you for watching, liking, and sticking around. You guys keep this channel going, and I'll be back soon with more stories that'll make your skin crawl. Drop a comment if you've got your own spooky tale to share, and I'll see you in the next one.